Hey everyone, TJ here. This episode was recorded on December 28th of 2020. Before the episode begins, we'd like to mention that the discussions during this episode are based on our own opinions, experiences, and interpretations. Due to recent events in the Hmong community and domestic violence, we'd like to bring awareness to anyone suffering or going through similar events that you are not alone, and that there is help out there for you. We've provided links in the description for those who might be seeking help or for those who want to help but are unsure of where to start. Thanks for listening and enjoy the episode.
Welcome to the third episode of our podcast, A Moment of Boba, where you get to join us as we share our life experiences with each other.
I'm Kalina.
I'm Pia.
I'm Finola.
And I'm Tina, and I'll be your host for this episode. Today we have our friend here as our first guest.
Hi, I'm Sigourney.
And today's topic will be the struggles of being an Asian woman, or more specifically, a Hmong woman. And if you don't know who Hmong people are, we're a minority group who came from the mountains of China, and then we migrated to Laos, Vietnam, Thailand, and then after that the Secret War happened, and then we migrated everywhere else, mostly to Minnesota and the Twin Cities area. Hmong people don't have their own country or their own flag. We're just our own kind of group. So then just kind of moving on, we are going to talk about some of the traditions in our family or in other families that a Hmong woman has to do, the Hmong woman duties, the do's and don'ts, and whatnot. There's just a lot that goes into being a Hmong woman. And so I would just like to start off that some of the do's and don'ts are probably dressing modestly. We have to be covered up. We can't really show skin because it's not embarrassing, but it just, I don't know. I feel it kind of brings shame to the family. And to me, it always kind of felt like that. If I wore something that was kind of revealing, then my parents would kind of make me feel ashamed of showing. Sometimes it's not even intentional, but for me, that's how I felt.
I think that goes back to just how Hmong women were dressed back in the day, because for Hmong clothing, a lot of it is covered up, long sleeves, and long dresses, and a lot of that is all covered.
Yeah, and I also they just wear layer after layer too, which probably could be something.
But honestly, I don't really. I think that's a very interesting thing too. Why? Because in Thailand and China is very hot, warm areas. So then it's why did people wear long sleeves? And especially the color black too.
But I think the mountains, because we live in the mountains, so it's colder up there.
It's true too. During the summer, But also during summertime though, I think at night of course it gets cold, but then summertime day it's hot. It's the heat. But I never really actually thought much into the clothing and the climate.
Yeah, I think in my family, it's not really the clothing for us about the don'ts of a traditional Hmong woman. It's more of how you present yourself. Mm-hmm. And by that, I mean someone's first impression of you or of how you act. So for example, the dudes, they would want you to if we have guests over, they would want you to go say hi and not just hide in your room. Wake up early and cook.
I mean, I feel staying out late would be compared to our brothers. It's always they can stay out until midnight, but for us it's around 10, 11. It's oh, come home, it's getting late, and we would have to listen and go home. Whereas when our brothers go out, they're out until 1 a.m. and I'm why are they out so late?
Yeah.
I feel our mindset now, as we've been in America longer, our mindset has become so modernized. And for us, why do men get to stay out later than us, and why do we have to stay home, watch our siblings cook, clean, and you see your brothers and even your father sometimes just sitting on the couch chilling, watching TV, and you're just standing there in the kitchen like helping your mom. Like, it's not always a bad thing, but sometimes it's just like feels very unfair. And it's like, can you guys come help too? But then I don't know, like very traditional parents are like, no, like they just stay in the living room, they just take out the trash, kill meat, clean.
Yeah, because a lot of people's like, oh, like those are like woman jobs the woman needs to do, which I understand because like just thinking back to like if we were to live in Laos or Thailand, like that was mainly the woman's job, like take care of the family, cook dinner. Men are the ones who like hunt, and so those traditions were brought back to the U.S. Whereas, but now like we're in a modernized and environment where like everyone is able to be educated and work and like care for themselves instead of like just the man of the household doing all that. So I think like it's really just trying to combine all of that.
I feel like we're like at an awkward generation of Hmong people because like our parents and like grandparents are the ones that came over to the US while we were here born in the US, so like which is why they still have that attachment to the traditions compared to us.
Yeah, which is difficult, I feel like, for us to try to understand from their point of view and from our own. Because I feel like when we get older, like, our idea will be more modernized, where our sons will also help too. But then, like, trying to understand from our parents' point of view, like, it is the women's job, or it is the guy's job to do one thing. Yeah.
For me, I kind of see it because when we're talking about all these do's and don'ts, I feel like a lot of cultures can relate. And I think the thing that sets us apart is the fact that these do's and don'ts set you up for marriage. So like for the women, you have to learn how to wake up early, cook for the family, do this, do that, because you want to be a good, like a good daughter-in-law. And that's why we are told these do's and these don'ts. And like what Kalina was saying earlier, these don'ts of staying out late or staying at like your significant other's house, that's to show that you're still kind of like pure in a way. It's not because, oh, they're dangerous, all this, that, but mainly because you want to show that you have value still. Because in the culture, like, if you're not, like a virgin, if you have a bad rep, then you are not respected. And I think that's what sets these cultures apart, is that these do's and don'ts are for the women's future, because the men that like you don't hear things like you need to learn how to do this so that you can be a good son-in-law. That's what I mean. Like you only hear about it for the women. But
I think also just to add on for like men, like also just to have a legacy, because last name like are important, having children are important, and so like make sure like you have a son to at least carry on your family name. And I think probably not just the Hmong culture, but like in other cultures too, might have that somewhere where like families really want to make sure like their sons are getting married and having a family so that they can continue on like their name.
And I think like kind of going off where like Yang was saying earlier, but also like kind of because like in the Hmong culture there is a dowry where the men have to pay to kind of like marry their wife. So I feel like for them too, it's kind of like, oh, like work and like make a lot of money so you can like pay for your wife.
I think kind of going deeper into like the men paying for the wife, like in like traditional culture, in the Hmong culture, some men would even steal wives. They would kidnap girls, and that way they would pay a less of a dowry, because like she went to his house and like now they have to get married. But yeah, and like I just kind of want to go back to where like the different clothes that we wear, because like like in China and like in Asia, like it is very hot, and the fact that we have to dress like in a lot of layers, and that also like depends like what kind of dialect you are, like if you're white or green or black, because I know like I think black, since like black dialect, they wear black clothing, and that's like really thick fabric. And I think like Hmong white people, they have lighter fabric, so it's not as heavy, it's not as hot for them.
And I think nowadays, after being in college and I don't know, being away from home and being in college, and you're having your own like Hmong student leaders, you can kind of see that the men of this generation is changing and kind of learning how to value women, which I really appreciate. And like it's not just the women talking about these gender roles or bride kidnappings or the bride price. These men are also talking about it, and it just goes to show that they do value women nowadays also, and they're willing to kind of change tradition up a little bit. And so women have struggled a lot more than men have, and it's a lot more lenient for men to do what they want. And
yeah, but I think it also makes sense when you were talking about because like girls are raised up to learn how to do these things, and you don't really see that for boys, so that makes sense when you say.
Yeah, and like another thing about the bride price is, from what I heard, it's the more valuable you are, the higher you're priced. So that means like if you have a good education, if you're pretty, if you have a good family background, if you're like you're just well respected and you're just a very good woman. And the sad thing about that is that they do all this and that for themselves just to be priced like a product, and then once you get married, none of that matters because you have to stay home now and like watch the kids, do the house chores while your husband goes out and gets all the money. But like, what if you were the one that wanted to have the career, wanted to be out there with your own business and stuff like that? So sometimes I think it's kind of sad how women work so hard for their future just to get told what to do. Yeah,
I'm kind of glad though, like that's not really happening anymore. Like people don't have to pay, or women can still be all those things, but we're not priced as much as we were in the past. And I feel like sometimes it's not even about the woman, it's just like the parents or like the husband wanting to be respectful, and they just pay like 3,000 or something. Because I know for my family, we didn't do a traditional Hmong wedding. It was very simplified, and I think my brother-in-laws, like, they just paid like 2,000 to 5,000, whether or like compared to like the 10K or the 24K that people could pay or do pay. But yeah, we're very lucky that that doesn't really happen anymore, unless you have traditional parents.
Would you guys say you guys have traditional parents?
I don't think so, because
No.
I feel like our parents like weren't okay. Like we grew up in a Christian environment, so I feel like in a sense like we don't really have that type of payment anymore. Like for us, I know like people who like are still very religious, probably still pay that amount, that kind of money for women.
Yeah, because that's what I was gonna say. I was gonna say like how like I think for us, our families, I guess not like we are lucky enough, but like we were able to like grow up in an environment different from like other Hmong children. Being inside the church, which makes our experience as like a Hmong person very different from like other girls. Like for like my friends that are not in church.
Yeah, because I mean, a lot of people sometimes do ask like, oh, does your family still follow like the old way or they follow the new way? And oftentimes that refers to like religion. Because more traditional families, I guess the old way would be like being, like our shamans, or what's the other word, animistic, versus like new way is like being a Christian now. And I think like again, like most of our families, we grew up in a Christian home, but then I feel like there are still some traditions that like our like family still follows, like for the clothing part of that of our Hmong culture. That's something that we still keep, and like making sure that woman knows how to cook and clean and all of that aspect too. Like those are things. But I think the only difference is just probably just like the religion part. That makes us not like traditional, because traditional would be like following the old ways.
Yeah, I think for me, I feel like my parents are pretty traditional in the sense that, you know, like the 1 month diet after you give birth. And like, you know, the traditional do's and don'ts about like women not sleeping over at their boyfriend's house and stuff like that. And learning how to be a good like now that I'm at that age where I could get married, everything I do, I hear like, oh, you should do it like this. If you want to be a good daughter-in-law, you should do it like that. And luckily for me, it's not like heavily pushed on, and it's not like that's all there is to me. My parents just want to say, like, I think in thinking with like if I was in my parents' shoes, it's more of the fact that they just want me to be someone that another family can see value in a way. And they're not very traditional in the sense where you have to marry a Hmong man, you have to like stay away from this clan or whatever, because I know a couple clans do that.
Like
Oh,
well, my mom said to stay away from Vu because they're crazy. Because their last name is Vu. Like,
oh my gosh. Yeah, like things like that. And I like even when we cook, like we don't have to sit together at the dinner table like how you see a lot of Hmong families doing. And one thing I noticed that was very different, because I thought my family was very traditional compared to all my other friends. One of my friends came over and she overheard that we had to cook for our dad soon because he was coming home from work. And then I was like, what are we gonna cook? And my mom was like, oh, you know, just some fried fish. And then I was like, okay. And then my friend was like, that's it? And I was like, what do you mean that's it? Like, he doesn't eat that much. And then she would say that for her dad, he expects the women to have like rice, a stir fry, a soup, like all like, you know, like that category.
Wow.
And if he doesn't have all those categories, then it's kind of like you guys aren't respecting him as a father. He's going out here making money for you, but you only treat him with like one dish. And I'm just like very lucky that I thought my parents were traditional, but then I start to hear other families and how their families' traditions are. And even so, like my parents, they're a little bit toned down, and they're okay. Like I'm lucky that they're willing to listen to what I have to say about society nowadays. Like I have to educate them on certain topics and why things aren't right and why there's like issues in the world and stuff like that. But they're willing to listen, which I feel like a lot of Hmong parents aren't, and they just have that phrase that you guys always hear, like "o xiande," which is like be patient. And luckily my parents, they don't use that phrase in that sense. I don't know about you guys, if you guys have ever heard that phrase.
I don't think our parents, Fanoa and my parents, use that phrase often. Or maybe because like they don't speak to Hmong that often either. I really hear it.
Yeah, and I also think it's because even with our own family members and things that we struggle with, like as the family, I never heard them use that phrase towards other family members, and I think that is something that they probably don't believe in. Like that's not right to just like be patient and wait out whatever the situation is happening, but like to do something about it. Or like for example, because a lot of that phrase is usually used when a woman is abused by her husband. Oftentimes, I feel like that's when that phrase comes up a lot. And they, just to save face, like just stay in that family and let your husband abuse you, and I think that's where like you should stay. No matter how, like, why would you have your daughter stay in that family if you know if they have someone who's abusing her? And luckily, like I 100% believe like my parents, if I were in that situation, they would probably want me to be out of it. Which is also why they care so much about like my relationship with TJ, making sure he's a good person. And I think that's like that's what I appreciate too, the fact that like they care and want to know who he is, so that it doesn't come to that situation where I would have to like pull myself out if need be, or just not putting myself in a situation where I would get hurt. But yeah, my I feel like, yeah, it's not a phrase used by my parents a lot. Because I think, they just want us the best for us. Mm-hmm. And so that's what they always remind us, to be careful with our decisions and who we are with. And I think regardless if we were in that situation, they would do something. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In my home, my parents never really used that. I feel like I've heard of it many times, mm-hmm. but not used by my parents towards us or like with each other. But like I've always thought that it just meant like be patient, like with other people, not like in an abuse sense of relationship. Mm-hmm. Until like I went to college, and then I was talking to my friend, and I was like, I was just joking around. I forgot what we were talking about, but I was just like, Oshande, and then she's like, don't say that to me. I'm like, what? I don't understand. Like, I was just joking. She's like, no, that's used for like when women are getting beat or like when you're in a bad position. Like, I hate that phrase. Like, don't say that to me. And it really opened my eyes right there, and I was like, oh, like, it's like a serious type of saying, Mm-hmm. And then, like, I just thought it just meant like be patient with someone. But yeah, it wasn't until then, like, I was like, oh, I also don't like that phrase. And then also around Facebook, like, I saw it too, so, yeah.
Yeah, in my case, my parents have said that a lot to me, but I think that's just because I'm very emotional and I'm impulsive with my decisions. Like, if I were to be in a fight or, like, an argument with my dad, and I vent to my mom, and after I'm done, my mom goes, Oshande. I'm like, why? Why do I have to be patient? Why do I always have to wait for, like, dad to calm down? And then why do I have to be the one to apologize to him? But then, like, that all goes back into, like, being respectful and just, because he's your dad. He's the man of the house. But, like, I think that phrase, yeah, I didn't know, like, the true meaning of it until, like, later in life, maybe, like, in the beginning of my college years. But I feel like, I mean, this might be an unpopular opinion, but I feel like we should change the meaning of Oshande. Like, even though it was originally based on, like, abusive relationships for that was happening to the women, I think we could just change it to be like a regular, just be patient, because that's what I thought my whole life, and that's what my mom said to me. Like, it literally meant be patient in that situation for me. And so I feel like if people don't like that meaning, then we can change the meaning.
I think that's something that's very hard to do and, like, kind of accept, I think, because it's a phrase used for many generations, like, up until this point. Like, if it's already, like, if you're already in this Western world view, and people still use that as a phrase to, like, oh, like, it's used because this is what women get told to do. And I think because it's been over for, like, a long time, then it's kind of hard to try to give a new meaning to. But even though, like, in literal translation it does mean just to be patient, I think in this context it's just hard to change it to like just be patient in other various parts of life. And I think it's just because of where it was rooted from, it just makes it hard to change.
If you guys don't know, taboo is when somebody dates or gets together with somebody who has the same last name.
Yes.
Yeah. So in the Hmong culture, there are 18 tribes, and the tribes are, like, by our last names. And usually if somebody has the last name as you do, they're basically like your family, quote unquote family, because sometimes even if you're not from your immediate family, like, last name considers like same tribe. So there are 18 clans, different Hmong tribes, and so being together with someone the same last name is like being with your brother, basically. So that's why it's taboo.
But it's just, like, so weird, because, like, you can, like, have a cousin with a different last name as you, but then it's okay to kind of be with them. Which, I mean, I don't know how I feel about that.
Because I mean, that's essentially like my family. How my family is.
That's even worse.
Yeah, because my grandparents, they were in the same village, so they were like essentially cousins, I think, or like related in a way, or relatives.
I think no, they were in the same village, but like their siblings kind of married each other. If that makes sense. So, like, my grandma was part of one family, and then my grandpa was another family. So, like, my grandma
had, like, a sibling that married.
Yeah, and then, like, another sibling from the same families would, like, get married.
Oh, so kind of like your brother-in-law would marry your sister.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then, like, within that, like, with their children or, like, grandkids, like, their grandkid would kind of end up marrying, like, another one of their cousins. Within, which then like the whole family tree kind of gets like messed up, and you're kind of just like, what are you to me? And like, who are you in the family?
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
This topic.
It's like a very, I don't know. Would you consider like a touchy subject that people don't like talking about, or like it's, I don't know.
I feel like older generation like don't talk about it, but like our age, our generation like can talk about it because just like that's gross. Like,
I hear about it a lot, and like I remember in my college like Hmong organization when we talked about the clans, we brought up if other cultures had something similar, and I think the Korean culture was brought up where they have like surnames too. There's like Kim, Park, and stuff like that, but they can date each other. Yeah, so it's kind of like that. And I remember people were questioning like, why, like, Koreans, like, they don't see a problem with it. Why is there a problem with it in the Hmong culture? And it was just really interesting to see. I don't know, it was just so weird to think about. Yeah,
you know, honestly, I didn't know like taboo was like a thing within the Hmong culture only, because I think growing up when I was, because you know, it's just been implemented in us ever since we were young. So like growing up, I like hear like, oh yeah, like this person, her original last name was like, let's just say like Erickson, right? And then like she like marries another Erickson, and I was like, ooh, what? Like, what? They're like, what? They have the same last name. That doesn't work out. But like apparently it's okay for them, you know? And it kind of just makes us wonder, like, what? Like, obviously, we're not blood related, but what makes it so bad?
I feel like it's also a different story because there are different races that has like Asian last names, like Lee or Young, and but those are okay because they're not Hmong, so we can like get with those people. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But I don't know. I've never actually like was ever interested in someone with the same last name. Yeah. Because it's always like, oh, he's cute, and then if you find out, like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like, oh, he's kind of ugly now.
Yeah. Okay, it's whatever.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of like when I hear like their last name, I'm like, oh, you're like a brother then.
Yeah. See them in a new perspective.
And I always wondered about that, like, you know how you're obviously that means your mom and your dad, they have different last names, but then you take your dad's last name. But it's okay for you to date someone with your mom's last name. I always wondered about that too.
So weird. I actually growing up, I honestly thought it wasn't okay to date someone because when I first, I guess, liked a Hmong boy who had the same last name as my mom, I was like, oh, I can't like him because he has the same last name with like my mom. There's no way. But then like people were saying like, what? Like, no, you can't. And then I was like, wait, what? I can't? Because like the whole time, like I just like, oh, you can't date someone with the same last name as you. So in my head, I was like, okay, same last name, like my dad and my mom, but it was just, you know, your dad because that's my last name. But I never really realized it, that until elementary when I first started liking this guy, that like, oh, I could actually like him, but like, but I always thought, I grew up thinking that I couldn't at all. It's funny. I don't know, it's definitely was I guess it can be an interesting topic.
It's definitely interesting.
Yeah. But
I know, like, a lot of couples are, like, people who like someone else with the same last name, like, since it's such, like, a taboo thing, like, they keep their relationship, like, a secret for a while, and, like, some people know, like, and then, like, some famous people, like, they've dated and they have the same last name, and then, like, people are like, oh, you're dating your brother, like, you're so weird and so gross.
yeah, I've heard of those. And
It's
really interesting. It's like, okay. Yeah. Yeah, and then it all goes back to, like, why can't you date, like, why is it not weird to date someone with, like, your cousin, but with a different last name, you know? Because basically, essentially, it's like the same, it's like the same idea or concept, in a sense. I don't know.
I also wonder, like, the people who date the same last people, what do they do when they get married? Like, do their parents disown them? Or, like, you know, because, like, it's not a good thing for us. And, like,
it might depend on the parents too.
That's true.
Yeah, like most of them would, like, disown them. But I feel like some could, like, there's a chance that they're open enough to kind of see past that. But at the same time, it just because your parents are like okay with it doesn't mean, like, because I know, like, elders would have a say in it, like your grandma, your grandpa, your aunt, uncle, stuff like that. So it's not just like the parents. And so I feel like once someone decides to get into a relationship with the same last name, you have to be prepared to receive backlash from everybody in the community. Yeah, it's kind of sad that it is ingrained in that way, but yeah, I feel like if they really love each other enough, they would be able to go through all that backlash. And I don't know.
Yeah, like, I actually I had a friend who, I mean, they didn't date, but they were like kind of talking and, like, flirting with one another, and they had the same last name, and she, like, told me about it, and I was like, oh, like, wait, oh, I don't know. I'm like, I mean, you guys like each other, I guess. And then somebody heard that I told her that, and they came to me, and they're like, why did you tell her that? And I was like, should I not? I'm like, I can't control her feelings and his feelings. I can't just be like, cut him off, you know? But yeah, so it was a very interesting kind of experience for me when somebody came up to me and said, why did you tell her that? Like, not that it was okay, but to, like, do what you want, you know? And I was like, but they aren't, like, related in any way, but yeah. I think there's just a lot of different opinions about this, because I feel like it's, like, 50-50, where now, like, some people are okay, some people don't care, and some people actually still care, like, it matters. And honestly, I'm just never on any of those spectrum. I'm just neutral.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm more open these days.
So, like, I don't really have a strong opinion about it. Like, as long as it's not your own brother, because that's really weird. You know? But I know some people have strong feelings about it.
Yeah, and I feel like the people that are in a taboo relationship, if they really loved each other enough, they would be together to the end. Because I feel like in a relationship and you're, like, tabooing, the biggest problem you'll have is the fact that you're tabooing, you know? Because then if one of them can't handle family backlash or anything like that, then they're gonna leave. But if you can get over that, then you're just gonna be together through the end. And it might not even be your family disowning you. It could be you leaving your family. Yeah.
Like, just deciding it. I think that would be, like, another, just thinking about, like, as women to not do, or, like, what's the word, bring shame to your, dishonoring your family. Yes, through that kind of aspect too, because because like because with taboo, if you taboo, then you're essentially dishonoring your family, which is why your family might want to disown you. And I think that's, like, something, I guess, it's just, like, the sacrifice that you would make, because eventually it might take a long time, but I guess your family might come to it, or maybe not at all. I don't know, I guess it really depends. But that's,
And this is why we relate so well to Mulan and the song Reflection.
Just talking about Mulan. Because, and in representation in, like, career-wise, because a lot of Hmong families would want, like, Hmong parents, generally would want you to have a good job. Like, I think, like, a lot of traditional, like our grandparents are like, make sure you go to school, become a doctor, a nurse, lawyer, like occupations that would bring in a lot of money. But when it comes to other different kinds of jobs, it's like oh, like why? Like you don't get paid much. Like for example, like if they want to be an actor, then like not a lot of. It's hard for most parents. I would feel like in the past to accept that they'll make it, you know. But I think now some parents are more supportive of that because what their kid wants to do, and I think that's like a kind of struggle for some people, especially that have traditional parents. Like, oh, you need to go to school to be in the medical field, not in like whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I feel like that was the case for my family too, because I'm a first generation student. My older brother went to the Navy, so then that meant that I would be the first one in college. And originally I was undecided, but then I ended up doing an English major to go into the editing field. And the hardest part about it was that my parents didn't know what editing was. And it was so hard to explain it to them because there wasn't any terms in like Hmong, so all I could say was when people want their book published, it has to go through me, basically. It's the best thing I could put it. And they still didn't understand it, and like after talking to other parents who could speak English better, who understands, and like they could speak Hmong also, my parents were a little bit more open because they could tell that like I really wanted to do it, because usually I have no ambition, I don't have any goals, nothing. So when they heard that I wanted to do that, they're like, okay, she actually wants to do it. And I think the thing that helped the most with my parents being open to the idea was showing them my successes in a way, like getting a job editing resumes, cover letters, and then through that job I got an internship for editing that was paid, which is kind of hard to find these days. And so they could see that the things that I was doing in college, I was actually building up to my career, so they were open to that. But on the other hand, my other siblings were all very different. We're all into sports. Even my sisters were all very athletic, and we were like kind of tomboyish. So my oldest brother, he's going to firefighting. My sister wants to do like animation, voice acting, so it's very different.
Very different.
Yeah, and then I'm editing, and then my other brother, he's biology, tech. So he's the normal kid in the family. Yeah, so because of that, like, I feel like in a way I kind of paved it a little bit, where I took all the backlash. Like, no, I'm not gonna be a doctor. No, I'm not gonna be this, because I'm the child that talks back the most, you could say. I don't know how to call it, but I kind of stand up for what I want to do in my life. And because of that, I can help my sister, my brother. So sometimes it's not even my argument. I'm like, Dad, let him do what he wants. Like, you know. But I feel like it helps them in a way. And even though it was easy for me, for my sister, I can see that it's a little bit harder, because now she's trying to show her parents, like, oh, she gets paid for the drawing commissions that she does, but the amount that she's getting paid and the pace that it's going at is like not enough for it to be a career, and it's hard for my parents to see it in that way. So in that sense, that's where it's harder for them to how do you say it, to warm up to the idea that you want to go into this field. Because for me, I showed them that I got a job, I showed them I got an internship, I showed them this and that, I graduated. But for my sister, they kind of saw it as a hobby, like just like a random little sale like that you put up on the internet, stuff like that. So it's a bit tougher when I see my siblings versus for me.
I feel like it's also hard for your sister right now because of COVID too, because there's not really many job opportunities with what like the career path that she's going with. Not saying that like there's no future for that, but like she's really good at what she does, and it's just like very hard to show your parents right now too because of our circumstances right now.
Yeah.
I feel like because our parents kind of, or not even kind of, they did grow up in the U.S. They came here when they were very young. So I think they are very understanding of what we choose to do as long. But I feel like it's like, if I were to tell them and be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna just drop out of school and like be a YouTuber full time, I don't think they would see the like they're like, what? Like they wouldn't really understand it, you know? Because I'm just like thinking, like, my brothers, they like to play games a lot, and so I can't imagine if one of them were like
a gamer.
Yeah, like, hey mom, dad, I'm gonna be a streamer full time. They probably wouldn't approve of that.
Yeah. They're gonna lose their marbles.
Yeah. Yeah. So like at a certain extent, like I think they are understanding because you know I chose like a basic typical job, but I think like because Kalina went to writing. My dad had a lot of questions at first, and because like, look, what are you gonna do with that? Like, other than being a teacher, but then like, you know, Kalina did have to say, well, I could do this and this and this too, and kind of like laid out a plan where they, oh, okay, yeah, I guess that might actually work, you know. But thankfully they did grow up. So they weren't like, oh, like it's understandable if you're not a doctor because that's just not what your passion is, and I think it's great that they understand that like if that's not what we are really good at or like what we're really into, then obviously we wouldn't go in that field. And growing up, I think a lot of it is like think about what you're good at, think about what you could potentially use your skills for, in that kind of way. And like even with I think it's harder on my brothers because they were really unsure, and like I just thinking what my parents would tell my brothers is like, what are you good at? Like, what can you use your skills for as your, you know, future career job? And I think with that, like, with not my youngest, but my brother, who's older than my youngest, I think, like, with him, because he likes to play games a lot, and so they always suggested, like, go into the computer field, like, design games, because he liked to do that. But he didn't. But, like, I think eventually he found, something that he enjoyed or doing, you know, that he wanted to go into. So, which was great because I know, like, my parents especially, like, really pressured him to think about those things. Like, junior year, you should know this and this and this. Senior year, you should do this and this. So
yeah, I think it's just like for our family, it's just that pressure of like make sure you go to college
or know your future.
Yeah,
like, yeah.
And, like, if you can't give a clear answer, then they will have...
You'll be useless.
Yeah.
But I think it's just something to scare us to make sure that we actually, like, have something for ourselves. So I think that's what they really want.
And just to kind of chime in again, I feel like my parents were a lot more understanding of my situation because since I was the first to go to college, like, I had to find a college prep program. I had to find all these resources for me to get into college because we weren't close to any relatives. We had nobody older than us that could tell us what to do. So I had to find all those resources myself. I had to move away from home by myself. I had to do all these new things that our family hasn't experienced before. And I think because I could do that and then graduate, that's why they're like, okay, you know what? She did all this. She can now. We trust that she can do it. And in the end, they told us, like, after all these arguments and stuff, they were like, no matter how much we argue, it's your future. We just want the best for you. And the only reason why they want, like, a doctor, lawyer, whatever, is because they know that that job would be stable. But the jobs that we've chosen, like firefighting, animation, and editing, those jobs aren't as stable as they've come to learn, you know? So I think that's the reason why they're a little bit more hesitant. But I think they're warming up to it.
Okay, well, you guys are so creative. Your families are so creative. Well, I'm in biology, so
it's okay. Some families, they got it. Like,
yeah, for me, like, I really struggled with my 3rd and 4th year of college. Like, I debated with changing my major like 10 million times throughout my 3rd and 4th year of college. I just felt like being the biology major, I've failed many classes. I've dropped or withdrawn from many classes. Like, that's like where I feel like there was so much failure in like being a biology major, and I hated the thought of failing and wasting money. Because when I went to college, I thought it was only going to be 4 years, in and out, 4 years, like that was it. And like the thought of being there another year, which I am in another year right now, I'm going in my 5th year. It just, it also felt like I was failing, not like my family, but like myself too. Like going in my 5th year, like wasting so much money, like, but yeah, whatever. But I'm almost done. I have like a semester and like a summer class to take, and I still like struggle with the thought of like going like furthering my education and stuff. And yeah, it's always been what my parents wanted, but at the same time, like when I was in high school, I took those career quizzes thingies that they give us at school. And like my score was always like something like creativity and also like a doctor. So it's like very different spectrums of careers, but then like obviously I went with the more stable one. And like my sisters, so three older sisters and 2 younger brothers, so all 3 of us right now we're like biology majors. My second sister's in her 3rd year, I believe. 3rd year, yeah. And she's also struggling with her classes. Like, I think being a biology major, like, you have to accept that there's failure, a lot of failure, because I've talked to many students, like, that are probably in their 6th, 7th year at my school, like, chemistry majors, biology majors, and, like, being, like, a biology major or biomed, whatever, we all help each other so much, and like we all know how much we struggle with our classes. Like organic chemistry, like kill me. I hated that class and I passed it, thank goodness. And yeah, like I don't know. Talking about it gets me very emotional because I am having like a flashback of like the 4 years of my life, which is not like a very sad thing, but like as you study more and have to like focus on your major, like you lose contact with many friends. You live alone, like in your apartment, and like you have a job and stuff. So like, and you don't come home. Like I live like an hour and a half away from my home, and it's like not difficult to come back, but like it feels like a chore to come back, having to come back. Yeah, and then also updating your family on your success or so-called success in school. Yeah.
But honestly, though, like, props to you and every other human out there for going to the medical field or like any like science field. That is a lot of studying and it's like something that I can't do. Even like as being a teacher and trying to relearn things to teach, I honestly, which is why I wouldn't want to do a different grade because then I have to learn a whole new thing. Like I don't think I can do it, even though I'm gonna be stuck in this school life forever. But like as long as I'm the same grade and I relearn this, I'm basically just teaching the same thing already. So like, just like props to you for still studying and having that determination to do something I wouldn't be able to do.
Yeah. There's like seriously, like without you guys, oh my gosh, like what would we come to?
I feel like my family doesn't really care. Oh, I don't know. Because like my oldest sister, she went into education. My second sister went into like photography. I think my brother went into social work, and then my other brother went into like outdoors education or something. And then I'm in English, but I was like trying to go for music production, and I was looking for universities to go to, but all of the music programs were like classical musics, and that's just not me. Like I don't play any instruments anymore. Like the only time that I played a clarinet was in elementary going to middle school, and after that I was forced to stop, so I couldn't do anything with that. but I wanted to be like a music producer and like have my own company and like get artists. Yeah, that was very ambitious of me. But then when I took the accounting class for music business, it killed me. I barely passed. So that class made me really stressed because I passed with a D, almost an F. And if I got another F, I would have been on probation for school because like in the last semester I got an F too. But yeah, so then after that I decided to take a semester break, and I feel like my parents wouldn't have let me take in the semester break off because like they're just very like what Sigourney said, it's 4 years in, 4 years out, like you're just in and out and that's it. But I got a lot of assurance, I guess, and advice and encouragement that like taking the break is good for you if you really do need it. College can take however long. It's just like it's gonna be debt and loan, so just don't take too long. But yeah, but yeah, I feel like my parents wouldn't have wouldn't have accepted me taking that break if I didn't cry, because I feel like they only take me seriously if I cry. But yeah, so I did take that semester break, and my dad sat me down and was like, "Okay, I'll let you take the semester break off, but only if you promise to go back." I'm like, "Okay, I'll try." And he's like, "Oh, and you also need to find a job." I was like, "Okay." So yeah, during my semester break, I had to find I had to find a job, and I also had to think about what I wanted to do when I go back the following semester. But I do think like my parents were like, they were wanting me to do something more stable, but then I guess I just expressed that this is just what I'm gonna do, so just let it be, okay? Like I don't want to stress about it anymore. I don't want you to stress about it anymore. So just let me do this. And then after Kalina talked to me about about her being an English major, it sounded really interesting. So then I ended up going for that, and I actually really enjoy it now. And I'm hopeful that I'll carry on with that as a career in the future.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think something I just realized about all of us is that like our parents just want to make sure that we have our life kind of lined up in front of us, I guess, because like with your dad, like, well, I'll let you, but make sure you have a job and you go back to school, you know. And I think that's something nice that I appreciate, is that that's what our parents like. They are understanding, and they like, okay, like you look like you have your life together, and you're not gonna become poor at any point, or homeless. That's what my dad always says. I think it's just a way to really appreciate them, really.
Oh yeah, but yeah, I remember my mom and I made like this mother-daughter journal, and one of the questions in it said like, "What do you want for your daughter?" or something. And my mom wrote in it, and I read it, and she wrote like, "I want my daughter to have a stable job because I won't be here forever for her, and I need to know that she's going to be okay without me." And I read it, and I started crying. I was like, "I hate my mom. Why did she do that?" But I mean, no, don't get me wrong. I love my mom, but like in that moment, I was like, "Why does she have to make me cry?"
Yeah, I think all the do's, don'ts, and all the views they have on education and everything we talked about today, it was like it's basically just to show that our parents care for our future, and we may have to go through a lot of downs to get there, but ultimately I feel like our parents love us a lot, and that's how they show that they love us, because they can't really say it.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's all the time that we have left for this episode. Thank you all for listening in and taking the time to be vulnerable with us. Let us know what you think about the topic discussed today. Please tune in for the next episode when we post, and remember to follow A Moment of Boba on Instagram and Facebook for the latest on our lives. Until next time!